everybody, I'm Simmons. This is Philosophy for Where We Find Ourselves, May 4th, 2020. And yes, may the 4th be with you as well. When we engage with others in our communities, our civic relationships, it's important to recognize that disagreement rarely will indicate some sort of failure on their part, but instead might invite us to demonstrate what it looks like to be virtuous at the level of argumentative engagement. Rather than asking, how could anyone reasonably think that? Maybe instead we should ask the question, how is it someone could hold that view reasonably? Now, usually this will require taking seriously different conceptions from which their beliefs emerge. They reflect what William James refers to as the core of our web of belief. In other words, they're the things that if we dislodge, all the rest starts to fall. So sometimes when philosophers engage in conversations, they're not interested in the specific question that's being asked or the specific disagreement that is on the table, but instead they're like 2 or 3 steps back from that question. So for example, when I disagree with someone about contemporary political life, it is usually not very productive for me to comment why they're wrong for holding particular conservative views, say. But instead, I try to bring us both back a few steps and say, how is it that we are both committed to freedom and equality, but maybe we have different conceptions of how those two have to stand in relationship to each other? That might be what underwrites our disagreement relative to immigration policy or social policy or economic strategies. The second thing we're thinking about is we are called as members of society to give good reasons to each other to justify the views that we hold and the actions we take in light of those views. The interesting thing is not just that you hold a view, but the reasons for holding that view should be offered in ways that invite others to engage you and consider whether or not what you're saying is plausible and maybe even more compelling than the view that they hold. We have to find ways to engage each other on terms that are accessible by the other members of our community. It's unlikely to be very effective if I start a conversation at my local homeowners association meeting by saying, but look, Martin Heidegger's account of the ontotheological difference is a grounding way for making sense of how we navigate social discourse. Everyone's checked out. Because the reasons I'm offering are anchored in particular texts and particular backgrounds I have that I cannot expect of them. When we give good reasons, we should try to find ways to speak in ways that others can understand and in ways that invite them to remain in the conversation. This is hard to do, especially relative to moral and religious issues. Finally, let me just say that one of the really important things when it comes to engaging in discourse like this is reminding yourself that it's not about winning the argument, it's instead about building relationships that make possible collective social engagement. It is extremely hard to do this because one of the things that is important to remember is some people are unreasonable. And some people are immoral. So in developing this democratic and discursive patience relative to judgments about someone being immoral or irrational, that doesn't mean that eventually those judgments are in error. So again, disagreement is hard, but yet it's important to enact these virtues, to find ways forward in order that we can live together, work together, and think together, not simply immediately be suspicious of each other just because we hold different views on difficult things. I'll see you tomorrow unless a piano falls on our heads.